Zainab was only 16 years old, but her eyes looked much older than her face. She lived on the streets of Lagos, a big and busy city in Nigeria. 2 years ago, her mother had become very sick and died. After that, her father disappeared without saying goodbye. Zainab was left completely alone in the world with nothing but the clothes on her back. For 2 years, Zainab had learned how to survive on the streets. Every morning she would wake up under a bridge where other homeless children slept together to stay warm. During the day she would try to sell old newspapers to people walking past the market. Sometimes people gave her a few coins. Sometimes she was lucky and found leftover food that restaurants threw away in their bins behind the shops. She had learned which shop owners were kind and which ones would chase her away with angry words. Zainab had friends on the streets. There was Tund, an older boy who looked after the younger children. There was Kemi, a girl her own age who had also lost her family. Together with 5 other children, they watched out for each other. They shared whatever food they found. They warned each other when the police came. They slept close together at night for warmth. The streets had taught Zainab that friendship was the only treasure that really mattered. But on this particular evening, Zainab's stomach was hurting very badly. She could not remember the last time she had eaten real food, not scraps from bins or pieces of bread begged from kind strangers. Real food. Fresh and warm. This hunger was so strong and so painful that it made her do something very brave and very dangerous. It made her decide to do something she had never done before in her life. As Zainab walked through the streets of Lagos, she suddenly saw something that took her breath away. The Lekki Gardens Hotel stood before her like a beautiful palace from a storybook. The entire building was decorated with hundreds of golden lights that twinkled like stars brought down to earth. White flowers hung from every doorway and window. A large sign announced that a wedding celebration was happening that night. People in expensive clothes were arriving in fancy cars, and everyone looked happy. Zainab stood outside the hotel and closed her eyes. Then she smelled it. Oh, the smell was absolutely amazing and wonderful. She could smell chicken cooking with spices. She could smell rice and soup. She could smell bread that was fresh and warm from the oven. She could smell sweet things like cakes and fruits. The smell made her mouth fill with water. Tears came to her eyes because this smell reminded her of her mother's cooking, from the time before everything fell apart, from the time when she was happy and had a home. Zainab's heart began to beat very fast. She was scared, but she was also extremely hungry. She watched as people entered the hotel wearing beautiful clothes and smiling faces. She watched as workers carried trays of food in and out through different doors. At that moment, she made a decision that came from both desperation and hope. She would try to get some of that food. Maybe she could sneak inside. Maybe she could take some food and leave without being caught. Maybe finally her terrible hunger would go away. Zainab took a deep breath and walked toward the hotel entrance. Her legs felt weak and shaky, but she forced herself to move forward. She saw 2 security guards standing at the door wearing uniforms and looking very serious and stern. They watched everyone who came in and out of the building carefully. Zainab knew they would never let a girl in dirty clothes inside this fancy hotel. She needed to find a different way to get inside. Then she saw her chance. A group of kitchen workers were carrying food containers through a side entrance of the hotel. They were moving very quickly, focused on their work, coming and going many times. Zainab waited until the right moment came. When several workers were carrying large trays through the side door at the same time, she moved quickly and quietly. She walked right behind them, moving like she belonged there. She kept her head down and walked with purpose, just like the workers did. She tried to look like she was supposed to be there. No one stopped her. She was inside the hotel now. Her heart was pounding so hard that she thought surely everyone could hear it beating. But everyone was very busy. The kitchen workers were rushing around preparing more and more food. She could see the big ballroom ahead where the wedding party was happening. Music was playing loudly, people were laughing and dancing and celebrating. She could see the tables with food piled high on them. Tables full of rice, chicken, meat, vegetables, bread, and beautiful desserts that looked like something from a dream. Zainab moved slowly and very carefully toward the food tables. Her hands were shaking with fear and excitement and hunger all mixed together. She felt like a thief, even though she was only trying to survive and stay alive. She looked around carefully to make sure no one was watching her closely. Then she pulled out a small cloth bag from under her worn dress. She had brought it with her for this exact reason, hoping and praying that she would have the courage to do this. She started to fill the bag with food. Her hands moved as fast as she could make them move. She took handfuls of rice and placed them carefully in the bag. She took pieces of chicken and wrapped them gently. She took bread, vegetables, and anything else she could fit inside without making the bag too heavy. She was not greedy or selfish. She did not try to take everything. She only took enough to feel full for several days, enough to share with Tund and Kemi and the other children sleeping under the bridge. Each piece of food felt like a treasure to her trembling hands. Each item she placed in the bag felt like she was stealing her life back, taking back some of the happiness that the streets had taken away from her. The bag became heavier as she filled it carefully. Her heart continued to pound and pound. Every second felt like it lasted forever and ever. She knew that any moment, someone could see her and ask questions. She knew that security guards could come and take her away to police or prison. But she also knew something else. She knew that her survival depended on this bag of food. She knew that her friends were hungry too, just as hungry as she was. She knew that this food could keep them all alive for another week. She knew that without this food they might get sick or weak. So she continued filling the bag, her heart pounding, her hands shaking, her eyes looking around to make sure she was still safe from being caught. Zainab's hands were still shaking as she tied the cloth bag closed and held it tight against her body, hidden under her worn dress. She had filled it with rice, chicken, bread, and a few vegetables that she had taken from the food tables. The bag felt heavy and wonderful, like she was holding hope itself in her hands. She knew that Tund and Kemi would be so happy when she returned to the bridge with this food. They could eat well for many days. They could share it with the other children. For a moment she forgot about her fear and only felt joy. But the joy did not last long. Zainab knew that she had to leave the hotel quickly before anyone noticed that food was missing or that a street girl was walking around inside the wedding celebration. She moved carefully through the crowd, trying not to draw attention to herself. She walked past people dancing and laughing and celebrating the wedding. She walked past the tables where they had not yet noticed that some food was gone. She kept her eyes down and her steps quiet. She was almost at the side exit where she had come in. Zainab could see the door now. Just a few more steps and she would be outside. Just a few more steps and she would be back on the streets, running toward the bridge where her friends waited. Just a few more steps and she would be safe. Her heart was beating fast with both fear and excitement. She felt like she could almost taste freedom and safety. She reached out her hand toward the door. She was so close now. But then something terrible happened. Something that changed everything in one single moment. A strong hand suddenly grabbed her shoulder from behind. Zainab's entire body went stiff with terror. Her blood turned cold. She froze completely, unable to move, unable to breathe properly. She knew immediately that she had been caught. She knew that someone had seen her taking the food. She knew that she was in serious trouble now. Her mind raced with frightening thoughts. Would they call the police? Would they hurt her? Would they take the food away from her? Slowly, very slowly, Zainab turned around to see who had grabbed her. The hand belonged to a tall man in an expensive suit. He was wearing a beautiful golden tie and a white shirt that looked like it cost more money than Zainab had ever seen in her entire life. The man was handsome and looked important and successful. But Zainab recognized him immediately. She had seen him earlier in the ballroom. He was the groom. He was the person whose wedding celebration this was. This was the most important person at this entire event. Zainab's legs felt like they might give out from under her. This was worse than she had thought. This was not just a security guard or a worker. This was the man who owned everything in this hotel tonight. This was the man who could do whatever he wanted to her. She opened her mouth to try to speak, to try to explain, to try to apologize. But no words came out. Her throat felt closed and tight with fear. But then something very strange happened. Something that Zainab did not expect at all. The man's face did not show anger. His face did not show disappointment or disgust. Instead, his eyes were very wide with shock. His mouth was open like he wanted to say something but could not find the words. He was looking at her face very carefully, studying every part of her face like he was trying to solve a puzzle. His hands were still on her shoulders, but his grip was not rough or mean. It was gentle. It was almost like he was holding something very precious. "Wait," the man said softly. His voice was shaking. "Wait. I know you." Zainab did not understand what he meant. How could this important man possibly know her? She was a street girl. He was a rich businessman. Their worlds were completely different. They had never met before in their lives. She was sure of this. But the man's eyes were looking deeper and deeper into her face, searching for something, searching for some memory or some connection. "I know you," the man said again, and this time his voice sounded like it was filled with strong emotion. There were tears forming in his eyes. "I know your face. Where are you from? What is your name?" Zainab was confused and scared, but she answered him honestly. She told him her name was Zainab. She told him that she lived on the streets. She told him that she had no family. As she spoke these words, the man's face changed. His expression became even more emotional. A tear rolled down his cheek. He seemed to be remembering something from long, long ago. He seemed to be connecting her to a memory that was very important to him. Zainab, the man whispered, saying her name like it was a prayer. Your mother. Your mother's name. What was it? Her name was Amma, Zainab said quietly. She did not understand why this man was asking about her mother, who had died 2 years ago. She did not understand why he cared. The man made a sound like a gasp. His eyes filled with more tears. He sat down on a nearby chair like his legs could no longer hold him up. He looked at Zainab for a very long time, not saying anything, just looking at her face. And in that moment, Zainab realized something. This man was not going to hurt her. This man was not going to call the police. This man was feeling something deep inside his heart. Something that connected him to her past, to her mother, to her lost family. My name is Kofi, the man said finally, his voice very soft and full of emotion. And I knew your mother. I knew Amma many, many years ago. Before you were even born. Before everything changed. Before I became the man I am now. Kofi stood up and gently took the cloth bag from under Zainab's dress. She wanted to protest, to keep the food, but his face was so kind and so sad that she could not say anything. He looked inside the bag at the rice and chicken and bread that she had taken. Then he looked up at her with tears streaming down his face. Come with me, Kofi said gently. We need to talk. We need to talk about your mother. We need to talk about how I knew her. And we need to talk about why I was looking for you for so many years. Zainab followed Kofi away from the ballroom. She followed him through the hotel to a quiet, private room where no one else was around. As she walked behind him, her mind was spinning with questions and confusion. How did this important man know her mother? Why did her mother's name make him cry? What was the connection between them? And why, when she thought she was in the worst trouble of her life, was she suddenly being treated with such kindness and care? As Kofi closed the door to the private room and looked at her with eyes full of compassion and memory, Zainab realized that her life was about to change in ways she could never have imagined. The food in the bag was no longer important. Something much bigger and much more important was happening. Something that would explain the missing pieces of her past. Something that would finally answer the questions that had haunted her ever since her mother died. Kofi led Zainab through the long, quiet hallways of the hotel. They walked past the noise and music of the wedding celebration. They walked past the happy voices of people dancing and celebrating. They walked past all the beautiful decorations and lights. But Kofi and Zainab were silent. They did not speak. They did not look at each other. They only walked, and Zainab's mind was filled with confusion and questions that she could not answer. Finally, they reached a small private room. The room was very nice and comfortable, with soft chairs and warm lighting. It was the kind of room where important business people talked about serious things. Kofi closed the door behind them so that no one could hear what they were about to say. Then he asked Zainab to sit down. She sat in one of the comfortable chairs and Kofi sat across from her. He looked at her face for a very long time before he spoke. I need to tell you a story, Kofi said finally. His voice was very soft and very serious. A story about a long time ago. A story about 2 children who lived in a place called the Hope House Orphanage. A story about your mother and about me. A story that I have been waiting to tell someone for 15 years. Zainab listened carefully. She did not know what to expect. She did not know what this story could possibly be. I was born in a very poor family, Kofi began. My parents were so poor that they could not feed me. They could not give me a home or an education. When I was 5 years old, my parents made a very difficult decision. They decided that they could not take care of me anymore. So they brought me to the Hope House Orphanage. They left me there because they thought it was the best thing they could do for me. I will never forget that day. I remember watching them walk away. I remember crying so hard that I thought my heart would break. Kofi paused and wiped away the tears that were running down his face. Zainab was listening very carefully to every word. At the orphanage there were many children like me, Kofi continued. Children who had been abandoned. Children who had lost their parents. Children who had no one in the world to love them. We lived together in a big house. We shared bedrooms and we shared food. We shared pain and we shared our sadness. But we also learned to share love with each other. We became like brothers and sisters, even though we were not related by blood. Kofi looked directly at Zainab now. His eyes were filled with memory and emotion. And then one day a new girl came to the orphanage, Kofi said. Her name was Amma. She was 8 years old. She was thin and scared and had sad eyes. She did not speak much. She kept to herself. But I noticed her right away because she was different from the other girls. There was something special about her. There was something strong and kind in her heart, even though she had experienced so much pain in her young life. Zainab felt something move inside her heart when she heard her mother's name. She had not heard anyone speak about her mother in a long time. She had not heard anyone talk about what her mother was like as a person. She only remembered her mother as sick and dying. She wanted to hear more. She wanted to know everything about her mother that she had forgotten. I was 10 years old when your mother came to the orphanage, Kofi continued. I was a very troubled boy. I was angry all the time because my parents had left me. I was mean to the other children sometimes. I would take their food. I would push them around. I was a bully. There was one boy at the orphanage who was bigger and stronger than me, and he would bully me because I was smaller. He would hit me and take my food and make my life very difficult. Every day, I would have bruises on my body from his cruelty. Kofi touched his arm, remembering the pain from so long ago. But then your mother, Amma, did something that changed my life forever, Kofi said. She saw what was happening to me. She saw the bigger boy hurting me. And one day she stood up to him. She was small and skinny, much smaller than he was. But she had courage. She told him to leave me alone. She told him that what he was doing was wrong. The big boy laughed at her. He thought she was funny because she was so small and he was so large. But your mother did not back down. She did not run away. She stood there and faced him with such bravery. Did he hurt her? Zainab asked, speaking for the first time since they had entered the room. She was worried about her mother. He tried to push her away, Kofi said. But other children came to help her. Your mother was so kind and so good that many children loved her. They came to help protect me because they loved your mother. The big boy realized that he could not hurt me anymore because too many people cared about me now. And it was all because of your mother's courage and kindness. Kofi's eyes were very bright with tears now. After that day your mother became my best friend, Kofi continued. We spent every day together. We did everything together. We shared our food at meals. We played games in the yard. We sat together at night and talked about our dreams. Your mother used to tell me that one day we would leave the orphanage. One day we would have our own families. One day our lives would be beautiful and full of happiness. She always believed that even when life was very hard. Did she leave the orphanage? Zainab asked. Yes, she did, Kofi said. When your mother was 14 years old, a family came to the orphanage. They were looking for a young girl to help them in their home. They chose your mother. She left the orphanage and went to live with them. I was so sad when she left. I thought I would never see her again. I did not know what would happen to me without her friendship and her protection. Kofi looked away for a moment, remembering that difficult time. A year after your mother left the orphanage, something wonderful happened to me, Kofi said. A couple came to the orphanage. They were looking to adopt a boy. They looked at many children, but they chose me. They said they saw something special in me. They said they saw a boy who had been hurt but who still had kindness in his heart. They took me away from the orphanage. They gave me a home. They gave me love. They sent me to school. They helped me become the man I am today. So you left the orphanage too, Zainab said. Yes, I did, Kofi said. And I never saw your mother again. But I never forgot her. I thought about her many, many times over the years. I wondered what happened to her. I wondered if she was happy. I wondered if she ever thought about our friendship. I looked for her many times but I could never find her. The orphanage did not have good records of where the children went after they left. I did not know her last name or where her family lived. So I could never find her. Kofi leaned forward and looked at Zainab very carefully. But when I saw your face just now, Kofi said, his voice shaking with emotion, I saw your mother looking back at me. You have her eyes. You have her face. You have her strength. And when you told me your name was Zainab and I asked about your mother and you said her name was Amma, I knew immediately. I knew that you were her daughter. I knew that your mother had lived a life after the orphanage. I knew that she had created a beautiful person in you. But my mother died, Zainab said quietly. She died 2 years ago. Kofi's face became very sad. He was quiet for a moment and tears ran down his cheeks. I know, Kofi said finally. And I am so very sorry. Your mother was one of the most beautiful souls I have ever known. She was kind and brave and strong. And now that I have found you, I understand that I have found a piece of your mother. I have found a way to connect with her memory. And I will never let you go through life alone like you have been going through it. I promise you that. After Kofi finished telling his story, there was a long silence in the quiet room. Zainab felt tears running down her own face now. She had never known that her mother had been so brave and so kind. She had never known that her mother had saved someone's life and changed someone's future. She had never known that her mother had been loved by someone as important as Kofi. Hearing this story made her feel connected to her mother in a new way. It made her understand that her mother's goodness had lived on in the world, even after she died. "There is someone I want you to meet," Kofi said gently. "My wife. Her name is Amina. She is a very kind woman and I think she should hear this story too. I think she should know about your mother. I think she should know about you." Kofi stood up and walked toward the door. Zainab stood up too, though her legs were still shaking from everything she had just heard. Kofi opened the door and walked back into the hallway. Zainab followed him. They walked back through the hotel, past the still celebrating wedding guests to find Amina. Amina was standing near the decorated wedding tables, talking with some of the guests. She was a beautiful woman wearing a white wedding dress that seemed to glow with light. She was smiling and laughing with the people around her. But when she saw Kofi approaching with Zainab, she immediately stopped talking. She could see something in her husband's face that told her this was very important. She excused herself from the guests and came toward them. "Amina," Kofi said, taking his wife's hand. "I need to tell you something. I need to tell you both something very important. Can we go to a private place?" Amina looked at Zainab with kind eyes. She did not ask questions. She simply nodded and followed Kofi. Together, the three of them went back to the private room. Once they were inside and the door was closed, Kofi told Amina the entire story. He told her about the orphanage. He told her about Zainab's mother, Amma. He told her about how Amma had saved him from being bullied. He told her about how Amma had been his best friend. He told her about how he had spent 15 years trying to find Amma, but never could. And then he told her about how he had found Amma's daughter, Zainab, just moments ago, trying to steal food from their wedding. As Kofi was telling the story, Zainab watched Amina's face. She watched as Amina's eyes filled with tears. She watched as Amina's expression became softer and more compassionate with each word. When Kofi finished, Amina did not speak right away. Instead, she walked over to Zainab and looked at her face carefully, just like Kofi had done. "You have her eyes," Amina said softly. "I can see it. I can see that you are her daughter." Then, without saying anything else, Amina pulled Zainab into a tight embrace. She held her like a mother holds a child. She held her like she was precious and important and loved. Zainab had not felt a hug like this in 2 years, not since her own mother had been alive. She felt her body go soft in Amina's arms. She felt tears coming from deep inside her, tears that she had been holding back for so long. "You are going to stay with us," Amina said, still holding Zainab. "You are going to stay with us and we are going to take care of you. That is not a question. That is what we are going to do. Do you understand?" Zainab nodded, unable to speak because she was crying so hard. Over the next few days, everything in Zainab's life changed completely. On the morning after the wedding, Kofi took her to a big shopping center. He bought her new clothes. He bought her shoes that fit her feet properly. He bought her school uniforms in different colors. He bought her underwear and socks and a warm jacket. He bought her a backpack and notebooks and pens. With each item they bought, Zainab felt more and more like a real person again, not like a street girl who was invisible to the world. That afternoon, Amina took Zainab to a doctor's office. The doctor examined her carefully. He said that Zainab was malnourished and very thin, but otherwise healthy. He gave her vitamins to take. He explained that she needed to eat good, healthy food every day to help her body become strong again. He told her that her body had been through a lot of stress and hardship, but that with proper care and love she would heal. After the doctor's visit, Kofi and Amina took Zainab to their home. It was a beautiful house in a nice neighborhood. It was not a palace or a castle, but to Zainab, it looked like one. The house had big windows and bright rooms. It had a kitchen full of modern appliances. It had a living room with comfortable furniture. But most importantly, it had a bedroom that was just for Zainab. Amina had prepared the bedroom especially for her. There was a bed with clean sheets and soft pillows. There was a desk where she could study. There was a bookshelf with books in it. There was a window that looked out onto a garden with flowers and trees. There were curtains in a light blue color. There were pictures on the walls of happy families and beautiful places. When Zainab saw this room, she felt overwhelmed with emotion. "This is your room," Amina said. "This is your home now. You can rest here. You can feel safe here. You can be happy here." That night, Zainab slept in the bed for the first time in 2 years. The sheets were so clean and so soft. The pillow was so comfortable. The room was so quiet and so peaceful. She did not have to worry about other homeless children stealing from her while she slept. She did not have to worry about the cold night air. She did not have to worry about police officers coming and chasing her away. She was safe. For the first time in a very long time she felt completely safe. The next morning, Kofi and Amina sat with Zainab at the breakfast table. Amina had cooked a big breakfast with eggs and bread and fruit and milk and juice. Zainab ate everything. She ate slowly, trying not to eat too fast because her stomach was not used to having so much food. But she ate everything that Amina had prepared for her. "Next week you will start school," Kofi said. "We have registered you at a very good school. It is called the Lagos Academy. It is a prestigious school where students receive an excellent education. You will wear your uniform. You will study hard. You will make friends. You will become the young woman that your mother always believed you could become." Zainab felt nervous about going to school. She had not been to school since she was 14 years old. She had been living on the streets for 2 years. She was worried that she would be behind the other students. She was worried that the other students would laugh at her because she had been homeless. But she also felt hopeful. She felt like maybe, just maybe, her life could be different now. Maybe her life could be good. In the following weeks, Zainab's life transformed completely. She started going to school every day in her uniform. The other students did not know that she had been homeless. They did not know about her life on the streets. They only saw a quiet, hard-working girl who studied very seriously. Zainab made friends. She joined the school's reading club. She began to feel like she belonged somewhere. She began to believe that she had a future. Every morning, Amina made her breakfast before school. Every afternoon, when she came home from school, Kofi would ask her about her day. Every evening, the three of them would eat dinner together. They talked and laughed and shared stories. Zainab began to heal. Her body became stronger and healthier. Her skin became clearer. Her eyes became brighter. She began to smile more. She began to look like a normal, happy teenager. At night, in her comfortable bed with clean sheets, Zainab would think about her mother. She would think about the stories that Kofi had told her. She would think about how her mother had been brave and kind and strong. She would think about how her mother's goodness had helped Kofi become a good man. She would think about how that goodness had somehow reached across time and saved her life too. She would feel grateful. She would feel loved. She would feel like her mother was still with her, still protecting her, still guiding her life. 3 years had passed since that magical night when Zainab stole food from a wedding and met Kofi. 3 years had passed since her life had completely changed. Now, on a warm afternoon in Lagos, Zainab sat in an auditorium with hundreds of other students wearing a blue graduation gown. Her heart was beating fast with pride and emotion. This was the day she had been waiting for. This was the day she would graduate from secondary school. Zainab looked out into the audience and saw Kofi and Amina sitting in the front row. They were smiling at her with so much love and pride in their eyes. Kofi had tears running down his face. Amina was holding his hand. Next to them sat Tund and Kemi, her old friends from the streets. Kofi and Amina had helped Tund and Kemi go to school too. They had given them the same second chance they had given Zainab. Seeing them all there, watching her graduate, made Zainab feel like her heart would burst with happiness. "Zainab Ama Kofi," the principal announced loudly. First in her class with the highest grades in the entire school. Zainab stood up and walked across the stage. The audience applauded loudly. She shook hands with the principal and received her diploma. She held the diploma up high, feeling tears streaming down her face. This piece of paper represented so much more than just finishing secondary school. It represented her survival. It represented her mother's love and sacrifice. It represented Kofi's kindness. It represented Amina's compassion. It represented the power of second chances. After the graduation ceremony, Zainab's family took her to a restaurant to celebrate. They ordered lots of delicious food. They laughed and talked and told stories. Kofi raised his glass and made a toast to Zainab. He talked about how proud he was of her. He talked about how she had worked so hard and never given up. He talked about how her mother would have been so proud too. As he spoke, everyone at the table had tears in their eyes. "I have something to tell you," Zainab said when Kofi finished his toast. "I have made a decision about my future. I want to study social work at the university. I want to help children like I was. I want to help street children. I want to give them the same second chance that you gave me." Kofi and Amina looked at each other with surprise and happiness. They had known that Zainab was intelligent and hardworking, but they had not known what she wanted to do with her life. Now they understood. They understood that Zainab wanted to use her pain and her experience to help others. "That is beautiful," Amina said, squeezing Zainab's hand. "That is exactly what your mother would have wanted." A few months later, Zainab started her university classes. She studied hard and learned about social work, about psychology, about economics, about the problems that cause poverty. She learned about how children end up on the streets. She learned about how poverty affects families and communities. She learned about how to help people improve their lives. Every day she was learning things that she could use to help others. During her university years, Zainab also started volunteering. She would go to the streets where she used to live. She would talk to the homeless children. She would listen to their stories. She would bring them food and blankets. She would tell them that their lives could be different. She would tell them that there were people who cared about them. She would tell them about her own story, how she had been a street child, how she had stolen food from a wedding, how her life had changed because one person had shown her kindness. The street children listened to Zainab because she understood them. She had lived their life. She knew what it felt like to be hungry. She knew what it felt like to be cold. She knew what it felt like to have no one who cared about you. But she also knew that life could be different. She was living proof of that. When Zainab graduated from university with her degree in social work, she had a new dream. She wanted to create a place where street children could come for help. She wanted to create a foundation that would provide shelter, food, education, and hope to homeless children in Lagos. She wanted to break the cycle of poverty that had trapped her and so many other children. Zainab talked to Kofi and Amina about her dream. She told them that she wanted to call the foundation Amma's Grace in honor of her mother. She told them about all the things she wanted to do. She talked about building shelters where children could sleep safely. She talked about providing food and medical care. She talked about helping children go to school. She talked about teaching them skills so they could get jobs when they grew older. She talked about giving them hope. Kofi and Amina listened to everything Zainab said. When she finished, Kofi stood up and hugged her. "Your mother would be so proud," he said. "And I want to help you. I want to make this foundation real." With Kofi's help and Amina's support, Zainab began the work of creating Amma's Grace. They found a building in Lagos that could be used as a shelter. They fixed it up and made it safe and clean. They bought beds and blankets. They set up a kitchen where they could cook food for the children. They created classrooms where children could study. They hired teachers and social workers to help the children. 1 year after graduating from university, Amma's Grace opened its doors for the first time. On the opening day, children from the streets came in. Scared children. Hungry children. Children with no hope. But slowly, as they saw that this place was safe, they began to smile. They began to eat. They began to rest. They began to believe that maybe their lives could be different too. Zainab worked at Amma's Grace every single day. She talked to the children. She listened to their stories. She helped them with their schoolwork. She taught them life skills. She showed them that they were valuable and important. She showed them that their lives mattered. Within the first year, more than 100 children had come through the doors of Amma's Grace. Among these children was a boy named Marcus. Marcus was 9 years old and he had been living on the streets for 3 years. His parents had died and he had no one to take care of him. When Marcus first came to Amma's Grace, he was angry and sad. He did not believe that adults cared about him. He did not believe that his life could be better. But Zainab spent time with Marcus. She listened to him. She showed him that she cared. Slowly Marcus began to change. He began to go to school. He began to study hard. He began to make friends with the other children at Amma's Grace. He began to smile. One day Marcus told Zainab that she was like an angel who had saved his life, just like Kofi had saved hers. As Amma's Grace grew, more and more children came for help. Zainab trained other social workers to help her. She worked with the government to provide resources and support. She spoke at schools and universities about the problem of street children in Lagos. She told her own story again and again, hoping that it would inspire people to help and to care. 5 years after opening Amma's Grace, the foundation had helped more than 500 children. Some of them had gone back to school. Some of them had learned skills and found jobs. Some of them had been reunited with their families. Some of them, like Marcus, had become like family members to Zainab, living at the shelter and growing up safe and loved. On the 10th anniversary of the day that Zainab stole food from Kofi's wedding, the city of Lagos gave Zainab an award for her work helping street children. They called her a hero. They said that she had changed hundreds of lives. Zainab accepted the award, but she said that she was not a hero. She said that the real hero was her mother, Amma, whose kindness and bravery had inspired everything she had done. She said that the real hero was Kofi, whose compassion had given her a second chance when she had nothing. She said that the real heroes were all the people who had donated money and time and love to help children through Amma's Grace. Standing on the stage holding her award, Zainab thought about the girl she used to be. She thought about that hungry, homeless, desperate girl who had stolen food from a wedding. She thought about how one moment of kindness had changed everything. She thought about how that one moment had created a circle of grace that had spread out and touched the lives of hundreds of children. She thought about her mother, and she knew that Amma was watching from heaven, smiling and proud. Every child deserves a second chance, Zainab said in her speech that night. Every child deserves to know that they are loved and valued. Every child deserves to have hope for their future. Through Amma's grace, we give children more than just food and shelter. We give them back their dignity. We give them back their hope. We give them back their dreams. And in doing that, we break the cycle of poverty. We create a circle of grace that will continue for generations to come. As Zainab spoke these words, the entire auditorium stood up and applauded. They applauded for Zainab. They applauded for her mother's memory. They applauded for Kofi and Amina. They applauded for all the children who had been given second chances. And in that moment, the circle of grace grew even bigger, touching more lives, creating more hope, creating more possibilities for a better future.